Okay, let's unpack this a bit. Have you ever felt like you're doing everything right? Eating well, moving your body, but that stubborn fat just won't budge. Or maybe you've lost weight, only to see it creep right back on, sometimes even more. What if there's this powerful, um, often misunderstood force at play in your body, something that dictates how and where you store fat and how easily you can lose it? Today, we're taking a deep dive into your sources to uncover the, well, pretty surprising link between your hormones and weight control.
That's exactly the mission here. We want to pull out those critical nuggets of knowledge about hormonal balance and weight management, give you a shortcut, really, to being well-informed and hopefully empower you with some actionable insights, things that can genuinely make a difference in your health journey.
Okay, so let's kick things off with something many of us are unfortunately familiar with, that source of frustration, the yo-yo effect. And what's really eye-opening from the sources is that this isn't just about willpower failing, right?
Not at all.
Your body is actually kind of hardwired to regain weight under certain conditions. It's like a physiological trap, not just a personal struggle.
Exactly.
This whole thing, this phenomenon causing weight gain back after stopping a diet, it's driven by a few key things. Energy imbalance, yes, but also shifts in hormones, endocrine factors, and even psychological instability.
It's a fascinating cycle, but yeah, incredibly frustrating too. This yo-yo journey often starts when someone drastically cuts calories or carbs to lose weight. What happens then is blood sugar can drop, sometimes excessively, and the body, searching for energy, starts breaking down, well, not just fat, but muscle too.
Ah, okay, so it's grabbing the easiest source, which might be muscle.
Precisely. And that leads to those intense feelings of hunger, those cravings we all know, the body's reaction, eat more. Often it's craving carbohydrates, which causes this sudden spike in blood sugar. And ultimately that leads right back to weight gain and, importantly, increased fat storage. And here's a key point often missed. 1 gram of glycogen that's stored carbohydrate actually holds on to about 4 grams of water.
4 grams, wow.
Yeah. So that quick, dramatic weight loss you might see initially, a lot of that is often water and muscle, not purely fat loss, which makes regaining the weight much, much easier, unfortunately.
That's a really powerful distinction. That rapid loss isn't always what we think it is. It could actually be setting you up for that rebound.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a real physiological trick the body plays. How do we escape this cycle then?
Well, the fundamental principle really is stabilizing your blood sugar. Think about it like this. Too much energy, especially simple carbs, in one go, your blood sugar surges, your body gets the signal. Store fat.
Okay.
But if your blood sugar stays relatively stable, then your body shifts into fat-burning mode. It burns fat, it protects your muscle, which is crucial, it reduces cravings, and it generally increases your energy.
And the flip side?
The flip side is skipping meals or severe restriction or even, say, exercising hard on an empty stomach. That causes blood sugar to drop. And in that scenario, your body panics a bit. It starts burning muscle for quick fuel. It holds onto fat like a reserve tank energy drops, and cravings go way up. What's really fascinating here is just how fundamentally blood sugar dictates whether we're in fat-burning or fat-storing mode, and crucially, whether the body protects or sacrifices that valuable muscle tissue.
So you've mentioned these chemical messengers a few times, hormones driving so much of this. Can you tell us a bit more about what they actually are and how they have such, well, profound control over our weight and where we store fat?
Absolutely. Simply put, hormones are these powerful chemical signals. They're released by special glands, endocrine glands, into your bloodstream. Yeah. And they travel everywhere, basically telling different organs and tissues what to do. Their jobs are incredibly broad, promoting growth, running our metabolism, influencing reproduction, helping us adapt to stress or changes in the environment, regulating mood, and just generally maintaining that internal balance, homeostasis. They're true master regulators.
Right, and when we look specifically at weight control, these sources highlight a whole cast of key players, don't they? Insulin, ghrelin, leptin, cortisol, estrogen, testosterone, incretin hormones, thyroid hormones. Quite the list.
It is. Let's maybe touch on just a few of the really crucial ones for weight management. First, thyroid hormones. They come from your thyroid gland, kind of like your body's metabolic thermostat. Too much hyperthyroidism cranks up metabolism, often causing weight loss. Too little hypothyroidism slows it down, making weight gain easier.
Okay, the thermostat, got it.
Then there's insulin from the pancreas. It's often called a fat-storing hormone. Its main job is to manage energy, and it's very good at storing excess energy as fat. It also inhibits fat breakdown.
So it locks fat away, essentially.
In a way, yes, when it's dominant. Then you have cortisol. from your adrenal glands. This is your stress hormone, essential for dealing with short-term stress, but chronic high cortisol. That's different. That can lead to fat accumulation, especially around the abdomen, the belly area, and it ramps up cravings for high-fat, high-sugar foods, comfort foods.
Ah, the stress belly fat connection.
Exactly. And finally, let's mention testosterone. It plays a role in burning fat, building muscle, and boosting energy levels important for both men and women, though in different amounts.
Okay, this next section is where things get really interesting, especially regarding estrogen. You might primarily think of it as a female hormone, but the sources show it has this profound, maybe surprising impact on where your body decides to store fat.
It's incredibly complex and powerful, you're right. Estrogen is mainly produced in the ovaries in women, yes, but also in smaller amounts by the testes and adrenal glands in men. And interestingly, fat cells themselves can produce estrogen.
Fat cells make estrogen. Okay, that's important.
It is. And estrogen isn't just about reproduction, it's vital for metabolism, heart health, bone density, mood, even cognitive function, and sleep quality in both men and women. Now, regarding fat distribution, historically, higher estrogen levels, like in premenopausal women, tend to promote fat storage around the hips, thighs, buttocks, the classic pear shape. This subcutaneous fat is generally seen as less metabolically harmful.
Okay.
However, as women approach menopause, estrogen levels naturally decline. And this often triggers a shift, a redistribution of fat away from the hips and thighs towards the abdomen. This leads to an increase in visceral fat, that's the dangerous fat around the internal organs.
And does something similar happen in men as they age?
Yes, a decline in estrogen alongside changes in testosterone in older men can also contribute to more abdominal fat accumulation.
So it's really not just how much fat, but the location that's key for health risks.
Precisely. And then there's a related issue, mainly in women, called estrogen dominance. This can happen if estrogen levels are too high compared to progesterone, or if the body isn't clearing out metabolizing estrogen effectively. This state can actually promote storing visceral fat too, along with symptoms like bloating, mood swings, difficulty losing weight, maybe irregular periods, dense breast tissue, things like that.
Okay, and for men, you mentioned fat cells produce estrogen. How does that play out, especially with belly fat?
Right. This is crucial for men. Even though they have much less estrogen overall, excess fat tissue, especially that visceral belly fat, contains an enzyme called aromatase.
Aromatase.
Aromatase. Think of it like a little chemical factory inside the fat cell. What it does is convert testosterone into estrogen.
Oh, wow. So the fat itself is reducing testosterone.
It's converting it. So the more belly fat a man has, the more aromatase activity, the more testosterone gets turned into estrogen. This can lead to more belly fat, reduced muscle mass, lower energy. It's a real vicious cycle.
A vicious cycle indeed.
And high estrogen in men can also contribute to other issues like infertility, erectile dysfunction, and even gynecomastia, which is the development of breast tissue.
Okay.
And one more layer here, both excess estrogen and excessive visceral fat are pro-inflammatory. This chronic low-grade inflammation can further mess with overall hormone balance, making sustainable weight loss incredibly difficult.
It really makes you rethink things, doesn't it? How much our internal hormonal environment is running the show beneath the surface. So this raises a big question. If these hormone levels, especially estrogen, are fluctuating naturally or getting out of balance, what in our modern lives is actually, causing these shifts, pushing them off kilter? Turns out it's not always just bad genes. The sources highlight a surprising number of lifestyle factors.
Yeah, let's dive into some common culprits. First, maybe surprisingly, body fat itself. Like we said, adipose tissue fat cells aren't just sitting there. They actively secrete estrogen. So simply having a higher percentage of body fat directly contributes to higher estrogen levels. It feeds itself in a way.
Okay, so more fat can mean more estrogen production.
Exactly. Then there's obesity-induced hormone resistance. This is a big one. Obesity can mess with hunger and fullness signals. For example, it can reduce the ghrelin response after eating. Ghrelin says, I'm hungry, so if it doesn't drop properly after a meal,
You still feel hungry.
you might feel less satisfied, yeah. And even more significantly, obesity can cause leptin resistance. Leptin is the I'm full hormone. Resistance means the brain isn't getting that signal, even if leptin levels are high. One mechanism involves something called C-reactive protein, or CRP, which is often elevated with inflammation and obesity. CRP can actually bind to leptin, almost like blocking it, preventing it from crossing into the brain effectively.
So the I'm full message gets lost in transit.
Pretty much. Which, of course, leads to persistent feelings of hunger. And obesity also causes insulin resistance. The body needs to pump out more insulin to manage blood sugar, and high insulin levels can also interfere with that leptin signal reaching the brain. It's all interconnected.
Wow. So feeling constantly hungry, even after a decent meal, it might be these signals getting scrambled. That must be incredibly frustrating for people trying to manage their weight.
It creates a constant uphill battle, absolutely. Next up, lack of sleep. Poor sleep just profoundly disrupts hormone regulation. It's like throwing a wrench in the works. Studies show it can decrease leptin, your fullness hormone, by around 16%, decrease insulin sensitivity by 16%, while increasing ghrelin, your hunger hormone, by 15%, and increasing cortisol, your stress hormone, by a whopping 40%.
40% increase in cortisol from bad sleep. Yikes.
Yeah, it really throws things off. Which leads us to chronic stress. Chronically high cortisol, maybe from work, life, whatever. This puts a strain on your body. It can actually deplete the resources needed to make progesterone, another key hormone. When progesterone is low, estrogen can become relatively high or unopposed, contributing to that estrogen dominance picture.
Right.
Plus, high cortisol leads to insulin resistance, higher blood sugar, and those cravings for fat and sugar, basically activating fat-storing pathways.
So stress directly fuels fat storage mechanisms.
It absolutely can. Then, of course, dietary factors. A diet high in sugar directly spikes insulin, promoting fat storage. That's pretty clear. Also, foods high in fat, sugar, and salt together can really hijack the pleasure centers in the brain, leading to almost addictive cravings.
Right. And what about drinks?
Alcohol consumption. Drinking too much can increase estrogen levels directly. It also burdens the liver, reducing its ability to effectively break down and metabolize estrogen that needs to be cleared out. Which brings us to liver problems, or just suboptimal liver function. The liver is crucial for detoxifying and eliminating estrogen if it's struggling. Maybe due to too few digestive enzymes, an unhealthy gut balance dysbiosis, maybe low magnesium, or just not enough fiber in the diet. It can't properly remove that excess estrogen, leading to accumulation.
And what about things we might encounter, like in our environment? Do those play a role?
They definitely can. We need to talk about synthetic xenoestrogens. Think of these as environmental chemicals that basically mimic estrogen once they get inside your body. Hormone imposters.
Where do we find those?
They're unfortunately quite common. Found in some plastics like BPA and phthalates, think food containers, water bottles sometimes. Also in certain pesticides, household cleaners, even some soaps and shampoos. They can add to the body's overall estrogen load.
So we're absorbing these things.
Potentially, yes, through skin contact, ingestion, inhalation. And finally, sometimes medications themselves can be a factor. Things like hormone replacement therapies meant to boost low estrogen if the dose isn't quite right, or maybe high-dose oral contraceptives, birth control pills, can sometimes lead to estrogen levels becoming excessively high.
Wow. Okay. So it really is this combination. Our own body fat, hormone resistance, sleep, stress, diet, alcohol, liver function, environmental exposures. It feels like our modern lifestyle is almost creating a perfect storm for hormonal imbalance.
That's a very good way to put it. It often is a perfect storm.
Okay, but the good news, and this is important, is that the sources provide a really powerful, actionable blueprint. This isn't just about losing weight anymore. It feels more like reclaiming control over your body, your energy, your overall health by actively supporting your hormones.
Exactly. It's about working with your body's systems. So let's outline that multifaceted strategy. First, looking at dietary strategies for blood sugar and estrogen balance. We already talked about stabilizing blood sugar key. That means things like aiming for small, frequent meals, maybe every 3-4 hours, having a protein-rich breakfast, ideally within an hour of waking up, and trying to finish your last meal at least 3 hours before bed.
Okay, timing matters.
It does. And prioritize fiber. Fiber is absolutely crucial for binding to and helping eliminate excess estrogen through your digestive system. Really emphasize cruciferous vegetables, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage. They contain compounds like indole-3-carbinol or I3C, which are like special helpers for your liver. They specifically support healthy estrogen metabolism and detoxification pathways.
So eat your broccoli.
Definitely. And that links to supporting liver health overall. The liver does the heavy lifting with estrogen breakdown. Support it with whole, unprocessed foods, plenty of water, and maybe some sulfur-rich foods like garlic and onions. And don't forget the gut microbiome. Your gut bacteria play a surprisingly large role in estrogen metabolism. If you have dysbiosis and unhealthy balance of gut bugs, certain bacteria can actually reactivate used estrogen, allowing it to be reabsorbed instead of eliminated.
Wow, so gut health is directly linked to hormone balance too.
Absolutely. Focus on a diverse range of whole foods, maybe include some fermented foods. Also, prioritize protein and healthy fats. Balanced macros help stabilize blood sugar and insulin, which, as we've seen, indirectly supports overall hormone balance. Plus, healthy fats are the building blocks for hormones themselves. And pretty obviously, avoid sugary foods and drinks. Limit processed sugar, sweet beverages, excessive simple carbs.
Common sense, but crucial.
Crucial. Limit alcohol intake, too, to give your liver a break and let it do its estrogen clearing job effectively. And finally, try to reduce exposure to those synthetic xenoestrogens where you can. Maybe choose organic foods when possible to limit pesticide exposure. Look for hormone-free meat. Opt for glass or steel containers over plastic for food storage and heating. Small changes can add up.
It definitely sounds like a multi-pronged approach on the diet front is key.
Yeah.
What about beyond what we eat? Movement, mindset.
Yes, absolutely critical components.
Wow.
Let's talk movement and mindset for holistic balance. First, engage in regular strength training and moderate cardio. Building muscle is fantastic because it helps reduce overall body fat, including that visceral fat. It also improves insulin sensitivity, which has huge positive knock-on effects for hormone balance. The guidelines suggest aiming for something like 150-300 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week, or maybe 75-150 minutes of high intensity. And a practical tip: increase intensity gradually, maybe no more than 10% per week, to avoid overstressing the body.
Okay, sustainable progress.
Exactly. Also, incorporate simple movement breaks. Get up and walk for at least 5 minutes after every 30 minutes of sitting. Aim for a daily step goal, maybe 6,000 to 10,000 steps. And remember, consistent exercise is also a fantastic stress manager, tackling that cortisol issue we discussed.
Two birds with one stone there.
Definitely. Next, optimize sleep quality. This is non-negotiable for hormone balance. Aim for 7 to 9 hours of consistent, restorative sleep. Create a good sleep environment. Dark, quiet, cool temperature. Try to limit eating and drinking, especially things like sugary snacks, caffeine, or alcohol, for at least 4 hours before bed. Stick to a regular sleep schedule as much as possible, aligning with your natural circadian rhythm. And yeah, limit screen time before bed.
The classic sleep hygiene advice, but it really matters for hormones.
It profoundly matters. And finally, actively manage chronic stress. We know high cortisol throws everything out of whack. So implement daily stress reduction practices that work for you. Maybe meditation, deep breathing exercises, yoga, spending time in nature, listening to music.
Whatever helps you unwind.
Whatever helps you genuinely unwind. Also, setting realistic expectations for yourself and others can reduce pressure. And seeking out positive, supportive people, maybe those who've helped you through tough times before. Connection helps buffer stress. If you connect all these dots, the diet, the movement, the sleep, the stress management, they create this synergistic effect. You're empowering your body to naturally find its balance, especially with estrogen, and target that stubborn, visceral fat, rather than constantly fighting against it.
And it's worth remembering, too, that you don't have to do this alone. The sources mentioned the value of support systems. Finding mentors, maybe a counselor, joining community groups like a dance class or a running club can really help with motivation and sticking with it long term, building that supportive ecosystem.
That's an excellent point. Community and support are huge factors in success.
So to kind of wrap things up here, the core message today really seems to be that understanding and actively supporting your hormonal balance, particularly estrogen, isn't just a side issue. It's a profound investment in your long-term health, your vitality, and the potential benefits are huge. Less stubborn belly fat, more stable energy levels, maybe improved mood, better digestion, just an overall sense of hormonal harmony.
Absolutely. And perhaps a final thought to leave with you, the listener. Knowing what we now understand about this intricate dance between our hormones and our lifestyle, what's one small strategic step you could take, maybe starting this week? One step to begin bringing your own hormonal symphony back into better balance and truly start reclaiming control over your body and your energy.
That's a great question to reflect on. We really hope this deep dive has given you some powerful insights and, importantly, practical steps you can take. Remember, every strategic lifestyle choice, even a small one, is a powerful step towards a stronger, healthier, and more vibrant too.